claim of executive privilege. It appeared earlier, though, that the former Trump campaign manager had gained the upper hand, but that was only for a moment. Later in the day, the tone changed. When faced with cross-examination from Judiciary Counsel Barry Burke, Lewandowski appeared visibly agitated. He squirmed in his seat, then ultimately was caught publicly lying about a key incident in the Mueller report. So what does that mean for the House Judiciary Committee and for the White House? Joining me, Politico senior writer and MSNBC political contributor Jake Sherman, and former House Oversight Committee spokesperson and NBC News Think contributor Kurt Bardella. Jake, there was talk in the beginning of that hearing of what Democrats were doing because Lewandowski was stonewalling so much, and why did they not just hold him in contempt? Did things change toward the end of it as Barry Burke got his hands on him? Yeah, yes and no. They could have easily still held him in contempt. And Kurt, I covered the Oversight Committee when Kurt was working on it, and I have no doubt that Darrell Issa would have held him in contempt. Listen, the main thing we have to understand here is what is this committee driving toward? If it's impeachment, then they didn't really make a case for it in total yesterday. They could have, but Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic leadership have said they don't want impeachment. It's too divisive and it's not right politically. So knowing those facts, it's hard to reconcile why they're having these hearings and how to assess them at the end of the hearing. What are the consequences of doing this by a half measure?
Well, it exposes their weaknesses. It exposes the fact that Donald Trump's strategy of stonewalling oversight, of basically making the policy of we're either not going to send anybody, even if you subpoena them, or we're going to send somebody who's going to be so flagrantly disrespectful that what happened yesterday is going to be par for the course. And so I think that the lack of message, the lack of endgame, as Jake alluded to, tells you that they feel very strong about their position right now in basically giving a middle finger to oversight anytime that they want. I read in Politico Playbook this morning, which I read every morning, that Nancy Pelosi wanted something to leak. What was that? She had a big argument with a disagreement. She's having a series of disagreements. Let's pull back the camera a little bit with Jerry Nadler, the House Judiciary Committee chairman, who has made the case multiple times that they have all the information they need and they are ready to proceed toward impeachment. And Pelosi has been angry at the Judiciary Committee staff, which has been quite aggressive in their actions over the last couple months. Now, I remember back in the day when Darrell Issa, who Kurt worked for, was too aggressive for its leadership, and John Boehner sought to rein in Issa over a period of several months and was, I would say, largely successful in doing so. I don't think Pelosi can do that here because I think this issue of impeachment is so charged and Nadler has so many people behind him that Pelosi, I never doubt Pelosi because she's the most talented speaker we've seen, but she would have a tougher time than John Boehner. 137 members of the Democratic caucus are calling, is that the number? Yes. Are calling for impeachment. Like That's not quite the majority at all. So it wouldn't pass if it was taken to a floor vote right now. The precedent, it sense, we just went through that. But are Democrats doing something that Republicans would have no problem doing? Oh, my gosh. And we said this earlier. If the sequence of events that happened yesterday had happened while Darrell Issa, my former boss, was chairman of the committee, we would have held him in contempt right there on the spot. There would have been no debate, no discussion. Is it because Bill Barr is not going to enforce that contempt? But it doesn't matter if Bill Barr enforces it because another attorney general can enforce it at another time. So they can hold it on for the future. Point is, it doesn't expire. Well, the point is to also have consequences for actions. Well, the point, I would imagine, is to show that there's separation of powers. Yes. and there's congressional, there's oversight over the executive branch. I'm not sure that they're doing that right now by not holding him in contempt. What we're seeing is when these hearings begin and the witness says point blank, I'm not going to answer your questions today, that is, at that moment, the chairman needs to hold that person in contempt, if only to have the precedent of, for now on, that's not going to be allowed. There's going to be some action taken, some consequence, some record of Congress asserting their oversight privileges and protecting them. Because if they don't do that, if they fail to do so, they're sending the message that for now on, that's what's going to happen. There is no reason why any administration, why Trump particularly, is going to send anybody who's going to be cooperative and not combative. And yesterday Trump won, right? He tested out a strategy, which was he blocked 2 aides, sent one up to take proverbial bullets and to not answer questions, and there was no consequence of that at all. But did Lewandowski, I mean, he didn't want to do this. It was pulled out of him by Barry Burke, who did so in a very skilled way. He showed that the president was trying to obstruct justice. He showed the president was trying to obstruct justice. But why? Isn't that enough? Sure.
to impeach a president.
Yes, of course it is. That is enough. What he said was probably enough, according to Democrats in that room who are on the committee. So if that is the case, if you believe that was enough, then that's what you spend your entire hearing on, drilling down that point and talking about nothing else but that fact.
Why don't one more question. Why don't the hearings go like that from now on? Why do we have these 5-minute back and forth?
What we saw here was for the second time in a row now. We saw this with the Mueller hearing, and now we saw this with this one. The Democrats need to seriously think about reformatting how they do these hearings, because the back and forth, 5 minutes on, 5 minutes off, letting the members who are really have different agendas than necessarily getting to the truth every time, they're grandstanding. We saw how it goes off the rails versus letting a seasoned prosecutor, cross-examiner do the heavy lifting.
It changed
Imagine
so much.
how would we talk about this hearing if they led with that rather than finished with
100%. Kurt Bardella, Jake Sherman, guys, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And President Trump is on a campaign swing through California, a trip that could add $15 million to his re-election coffers. California